This is Scott McGillivray for the Sun's Audio Newsletter, and we're here at the 1990 Clearwater Beach Sons of the Desert Convention. One of our celebrity guests here at the convention is familiar to all Laurel and Hardy fans as the character lead in Babes in Toyland. You'll see him in Bohemian Girl. You'll see him in Pick a Star. He's Felix Knight. And Felix, welcome on behalf of all the listeners and all the people who couldn't be here at the convention.
Thank you very much.
Felix, when did you first join the Sons? When did you first become involved with Sons activities?
I was discovered by Dwayne Smith, I don't know, about 7 or 8 years ago. I had lost track of Babes in Toyland and all the people that I'd worked with because I'm going to make a little prelude to this. I had gone to New York from California shortly before the war, and then in the war I went to the South Pacific, and when I came back I had to reestablish my career, and I lost track of Henry and Virginia and all of the other people that I had known. And there was a meeting of the Sons in New York, and they said they were trying to find out who was left of the group that worked with Laurel and Hardy in Babes in Toyland. And somebody said, I wonder where Felix Knight is. And one of the members said, I think his name is in the Manhattan directory. So Dwayne Smith called me, and my wife answered the phone, and he identified himself. And I talked to him, and he told me who he was, and then I found it was legit, because I get a lot of crank calls, you know. And he sounded like such a nice guy. They wanted to invite me to their annual dinner. And I went to the annual dinner, and we started a relationship, an association, and it's been going on now for 7 or 8 years. So I attend all their regular yearly dinners, and 4 years ago was the first time that I had the time to go to a international convention. That was at Valley Forge. And I got up and sang some of the music, and then they played the soundtrack, and of course when that soundtrack was made, I was a lot younger and I sang a lot higher, so that the soundtrack was in the original key, and when I sang the three songs from Babes in Toyland, I sang in the lower key.
Yes. Well, it certainly was a thrill for those of you listening who were at the Valley Forge convention or have heard the recordings of it. Felix was still in very fine voice.
Thank you.
It strikes me that the atmosphere while making Babes in Toyland might have been similar to a college light opera company, because all of the leads were young. Charlotte Henry, yourself, Henry Brandon.
That's right. Well, the reason for that was, I think, that they had one young man from Broadway named Johnny Downs who played Jack and Jill Went Up the Hill. He played Jack in the Jack and Jill scene. And we were all young because they needed somebody that would be believable in reenacting the rhymes of Mother Goose, because they're children's rhymes, you see. And they got people, and I think, I looked very young at that time. I was 19, and you couldn't tell whether I was 14 or 15. And, I mean, if you saw the movie today, you'd see how young I looked. And I think that was the reason that we had so many young people.
Do you recall anything about Charlotte Henry, the leading lady in
I recall a lot about Charlotte. Charlotte was a darling girl with an very unhappy home life. And she was she was always sad. It was an amazing thing that this young girl who was 19 had the world on her shoulders, and she always appeared very sad. She very seldom smiled. And then I found out later on that the father had taken off when she was a little girl, never heard from him again, and that her mother was a heavy drinker. And her mother came to the set one day and was going to tell Gus Mines how to direct her daughter, and it was the most embarrassing thing, and the poor little thing broke down, and we had to stop shooting. Charlie Rogers and Gus Mines were the two directors, and Gus was our director, and Charlie was always the boys' director, and they got along very well together, and Mines was well known for directing our gang, and we used some of the our gang kids in that sleep sequence in the slumber scene. And it was very easy. We got along very well. But I found Stan to be the genius, a very high-class gentleman, and a very, very kind person. Stan, from his old vaudeville days, reached back and pulled all of his old friends in any kind of job that was available for them, because vaudeville was dying and there was no more. But Stan was that kind of a person. I was very friendly with Stan. I wasn't friendly with Babe at all. I found Babe very difficult to get along with. As far as I was concerned, he was. Everybody called him Lovable Babe, but I'm sorry to say this at the Sons of the Desert Convention, but I found Babe overbearing and very difficult to people under him, people who he didn't think came up to his professionalism. Babe would get hot under the lights, and then he'd have to go back and pose the scene again, which he just finished, and he hated that, and he'd be sweating, and he was mad at everybody. So I didn't get along with him very well. I fortunately didn't have too much contact with them, because they had their own director. They shot their scenes. We had Gus Mines. We shot ours. And then the two would come together when we'd do in the big scenes. We would all work together. One of the sons, the New York number 110, we were talking, and he asked, how many movies did you make with Laurel and Hardy? And I said 2. I did Toyland, and then I did the number in Bohemian Girl. He said, no, wait a minute, you did a 3rd one. I said, I did? And he said, yep. What was the name of it? He said, Pick a Star. I said, what was the scene? He said, a nightclub scene. And I said, oh my God, I don't believe it. He said, what's that? I said, I did a test, a nightclub scene for a movie that they were going to make, and they told me the excuse they used was that they didn't raise the money for it, so they had to shelve it. And they took that complete test. It was just like a movie scene.
Production number.
The whole thing, the production number. And just took that film and spliced it right into Pick a Star.
Oh.
And I wasn't the star pick. But the best part of that story is I was never paid anything for it. They used it, and I never got a penny.
Oh my God!
That was one of Mr. Roach's tricks. He was tricky.
Well, they knew where to go to get a good singer. I'll say that. I mean, they weren't going to hire somebody off the street when they had Felix Knight to sing.
Thank you, Scott. Oh, there's another thing. They took something from Babes in Toyland on my voice, and you remember the funny-looking little guy in our gang with freckles called Alfalfa?
Yes.
And they had Alfalfa singing I've forgotten which one it was. I think maybe it was the scene from the cave where the slumber song.
Yes.
The lullaby. And they had him sing that in some movie as a comedy takeoff. And that was the Hal Roach studio.
Uh-huh. Did you have a chance to work at other studios while you were working for Roach?
Oh, yes. I made 7 movies altogether, I think it was. First movie I made was a real stinker. Called Down to Their Last Yacht.
With our RKO picture.
Pictures.
That was the last movie that particular producer made.
That's right. That's the one. And then I went to 20th Century, and I did a movie with Charles Boyer and Loretta Young called Caravan. And it was about the grape country, the Tokaj grape country in Hungary. And I had a good singing part in that, had some lines, and playing with people like Boyer and Loretta Young. And I also did the French version. Boyer played himself in both because he was French. And Annabelle, who'd married Tyrone Power later, did the French version. And I sang the songs in French and did the dialogue in French because I was quite fluent in French at that time. I'm not now because I don't use it too much now. Then I went to First National, and I did 2 what they call shorts, 2,000-footers. One was first color that I made. I made 2 colors there. One was Springtime in Holland, which was about the little Dutch boy and the little Dutch girl. And then the other one was called Carnival Days. I was a jockey that was trying to be bribed by the gangsters, you see. It was very funny. Let's see. Then I made the 3 at Roach, and I was under contract at MGM and never did a move at MGM.
So they kept loaning you out.
That's right. I was farmed out to everybody. So they had Nelson Eddy and Alan Jones, and they had 3 or 4 other younger singers who didn't do anything, but they were all under contract by the time I got there. They signed me so they'd have somebody to farm out.
Oh, to meet the demand so they could hold on to.
That's right. I was paid $750 a week, and they used to collect $1,500, $2,000 a week by farming me out, and that was big money in those days.
They would be paid by the studio that wanted you $1,500 and give you $750.
That's right. Oh yes. Happy days.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Sun's Audio Newsletter.
It was my pleasure, Scott. Thank you.